What made you join the membership? You've got plenty of life experience. You've got your own kids, but you joined us.
Oh, I did. Oh, my goodness. I remember watching those free little sessions that you did in the school holidays last year. And I remember going, oh my God, this is going to help me for the support, for the advice of experienced teachers, tips along the way, all the resources. Absolutely. Like, it was just a no-brainer.
Welcome to Rainbow Skies for New Teachers, where we're all about bite-sized tips and simple strategies for bright and busy new teachers.
If you're in your first few years of your career and want to make the rollercoaster ride of teaching more fun, streamlined and stress-free, you're in the right place.
We're Ashleigh and Alisha, the dynamic duo from Rainbow Sky Creations, and we're excited to be your teacher mentors on the go. There are rainbows ahead, my friend.
And together, we're unstoppable. Let's get into today's episode.
Rainbow Sky Creations acknowledges the traditional owners of the land we have recorded this podcast on, the Dharawal and Whadjuk Noongar people. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures.
Well, hello there. Welcome back to Rainbow Skies for New Teachers. Today, we have got another inspirational conversation to share with you. I want to introduce Lydia. Lydia is a first-year teacher, but she's also a parent. And today, she openly and honestly shares a little bit about her parenting journey and a little bit about her teaching life. We talk about the power of having a cheerleader who believes in you. We discuss how tears are okay and totally normal. And we also have a chat about her neurodiverse children. Her son has ADHD, Tourette Syndrome and OCD, and one of her daughters has an ADHD diagnosis as well. And we talk about how she has navigated that as a parent and how to tackle these difficult conversations with parents so that everyone is on the same team. I think you are going to really love this open and honest conversation with Lydia. Welcome back to Rainbow Skies for New Teachers. I am really excited for this conversation that we're going to have today because it's something a little bit different. And you have guessed it, I have got a guest here and her name is Lydia. Welcome, Lydia.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
We are super excited to have you on this podcast. Now, Lydia is a part of our membership Transform Your First Years, but she's also joining us with a world of knowledge from a previous career. And as a parent, we're going to ask her a few questions about her parent life as well. So I'm really excited for this conversation because I think we're going to get lots of different nuggets of goodness along the way. So let's just get started with the basics. How long have you been teaching and where in Australia are you located?
Okay, so I am in Perth, Western Australia, and I have been teaching for 1 year. So I am just entering my second year of teaching.
Fabulous. And what grade are you teaching this year?
I will be teaching year one. Again, I had year ones last year and I'm going to teach year one again this year. So, yeah.
It's so good to have a grade more than 1 year in a row because you just get so much more confident and competent with everything that you need to do.
Yeah, I think I'm really excited for that, actually. I just want to consolidate everything that I've learned in that first year and just build on it and just build on that confidence, I think.
For sure. And you will do that. Everything starts to become a little bit of second nature, which is really, really nice. Now, teaching was not your first career, Lydia. So what did you do before you became a teacher and why did you become a teacher?
Okay, wow, yes. Big question. So I was a radiographer. I worked in X-ray and scanning and doing mammograms for women. And I was doing that for, over 20 years, basically. And throughout that time, look, I loved it. I really enjoyed my profession. I didn't really have one area within radiography because it's so massive that I wanted to specialize in. I felt I was getting a little bit lost. And plus, after my children, I was working part-time. So I wasn't as, I guess, not invested. I was invested, but, it was just different to how it was before I had children. And I'd always been thinking about teaching, actually, even back to when I was in high school and we had to do work experience. I did my work experience as like a 15-year-old back in my old primary school. It had been in the back of my mind. Just, I guess when I was younger, I just didn't have the confidence. I really didn't think I could stand up in front of a classroom of kids or teenagers or anything like that. But it just kept niggling away at me in the back of my mind. And so as I was approaching 40 a few years ago, I thought, well, maybe I should give it a go. Yeah. And actually it was a conversation with a patient that, encouraged me to do it. as for why I wanted to be a teacher, I guess I've always felt that I could make a difference. The usual kind of teacher type stuff. I've always been in a caring profession, so I am at heart, a caring person. I have a love of learning, and I just want to be able to instill that in others as well, I guess.
Oh, I love that. I think the best teachers are lifelong learners. So hearing you say that is just fabulous. So you mentioned that a patient inspired you to pursue teaching by saying something specific. Are you comfortable in sharing with us what that thing was?
Yeah, so this lady, she probably doesn't even know it, but she was just about to go for some surgery and had been through a lot. And we were just having a conversation, as I did with all my patients. I love a chat. We were talking about what she did for work. And she was like, well, I've done a bit of nursing and I've done a bit of teaching and I've done a bit of this and I've done a bit of that. And I was like, oh my goodness, like how amazing, in your short life, you've just done so much. She said, oh, well, life is too short, and she looked at me and she said, what is it that you want to do? And I was like, wow, I would love to teach. And she said, you have got to do it. I had a nurse with me, one of my colleagues, a radiology nurse, and she was like, wow, I never knew that about you, Lydia, and she was like, I'm going to make sure she does this, you would be an amazing teacher. And I thought, oh, well, just get off my back, and all this. And then she would keep at me. This nurse friend of mine, she was like, so have you looked at universities yet? And I was like, no, not yet. And then she said, well, you need to get onto it. And so then the ball just started rolling. I started looking at what I could do, universities, in Perth. And because I had a degree already, I could do a master's. So it didn't seem like it was impossible at that stage. Yeah. And I continued to work. So then I studied part-time and I just did the master's over a few years. Took a bit longer, but got there.
That's amazing. It actually shows the power of having a cheerleader in your court as well. So the patient planted the seed, but having that cheerleader and that person that supported you had made a huge difference. And that's kind of what we do as teachers, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And I always said to this nurse friend of mine, Suzanne, that she was the one who kept pushing me. She kept nagging away at me saying, have you done it? Have you done it? And yeah, it's absolutely true. I think it would be the same in any profession. If you've got somebody in your corner that thinks that you can do something, that encouragement and support is priceless. Absolutely.
Absolutely. I agree, definitely. So you're just off your first year. We're recording this in the January Christmas holidays. So could you describe your first year in 3 words? How was it?
Now, it was exhausting.
Yes.
I have never been so tired in all of my life, probably because I worked way too many hours, but we do that as first year teachers. My second word would be emotional. I have cried probably more in the last year, tears of frustration, but also of like joy and happiness. I guess I am an emotional person anyway, but I would cry in front of my deputy principal, my principal, in front of my teacher partner. I would cry with happiness in front of the children. And they'd be like, are you crying? And I'm like, yes, because I'm so happy. Look at what you did. And my third word would be, comes back to the crying with happiness, rewarding. I mean, how amazing is this profession? It's super rewarding. I have found it incredible.
The rewarding part of it gets a little bit addictive, I found, especially when you teach those younger grades, because you see so much progress and you make so many connections.
Absolutely, yeah. And they just soak it all in, those little kids, they're just wanting to learn, they're so excited, and they really like you as their teacher.
Yes, which is an added bonus, isn't it? Going back to the crying, I just want to say to anyone out there, if you cry in your principal's office or your deputy or with your teaching partner, that is completely normal.
Oh,
I've
totally
been there. I remember one time my principal said something that upset me and it had nothing to do with him and everything to do with me. And I went and locked myself in the sports shed, which was like this underground dungeon. And I just sobbed my heart out. But it felt much better after that.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's one of the things maybe it'll come up again about just being yourself and being vulnerable is important.
It is so important because we're teachers. We're not superhuman.
Yes.
And I feel like that as a parent too. Sometimes you're expected to have it all together. And as a teacher, you're supposed to have it all together. And you're supposed to know all the things. But that's actually not the truth. You're just a human being doing your very best. And the students in your class are just little miniature versions of human beings doing their very best. And we need to support and work together.
Totally.
Okay, so was there a particular problem or worry that you came across in your first year that you can tell us about and perhaps how you overcame it for anyone else who's out there who's just starting their first year or is new to the career of teaching?
I guess there was quite a lot that you worry about in your first year, but the one thing that kept popping up for me was I kept worrying about whether I was moving the kids from where they are to where I want them to be, so getting them that level of improvement throughout the year, basically. You might not see it day to day because you're in the grind of it. And that's when that kind of worry would set me, am I doing enough? Am I teaching enough? Am I doing enough? Am I assessing enough? All those things. Is it enough? Is it enough? But then when you do those little assessments, you can see the growth and you can record it, and you can record it against, your previous results, and you can see the growth. I guess at uni, they talk a lot about moving students from point X to point Y, especially, I guess, in the master's course. There's not a lot of how to do that. So talking it through with my teaching partner, I was really lucky. So there was a teacher right next door who had lots of experience, and being able to discuss things like that with her and then being able to look at the results of my students basically reassured me that actually I was doing enough.
Absolutely. It's funny that you say that because we have a Facebook group. It's now a podcast Facebook group, but it was originally a Facebook group for new teachers. And we would say, what is one worry that you have as a new teacher? And at least 30% would say, I'm worried that I'm not going to be able to get the students to make enough progress. Like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to see that and do that. The reality is that if you're showing up every day and you're supporting those students, you might not see the progress overnight, but over time you do. And that's why the data, which I know is one of those words that gives me a shake in my boots as well.
Yes.
But that's why collecting that data is important. And it doesn't have to be something that is really structured and a standardized test. Sometimes it can be simple as just looking at their work and noticing that they have made that change, or jotting down with how they've gone and then how they've improved. And I love that you said that you collected that data just in little bits and you could see that movement happening. There are more times than not that movement does happen. And if it's not happening, then that's the time to go, hang on a second, let's go and ask for some help about this. Go and speak to the special needs teacher or the coordinator and say, I'm not seeing movement with this child, or where they're not making the progress I would expect. And they may be able to give you some feedback, or there may be other things to investigate. And often when we don't see that progress being made by students, there is something else that we need to help them with. It might be learning, it might be family, it might be regulation. There's lots of different things. So don't put all the pressure on yourself, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yes, absolutely. And, as a first year teacher, it's hard not to put that pressure on yourself because you are that person standing at the top of the classroom. But I guess as the year went on and I was seeing that growth in the students, that I was able to think, actually, looks like I'm doing an okay job here. And I can start taking the pressure off myself, even though we really don't do that. We kind of tell ourselves we can, but then we definitely need a little help in doing that. But keeping those little consistent assessments as well. Like, so we did it in literacy. We do the same type of assessment, like a little writing task. And it was just keeping it super simple for the students, but really enjoyable. We would do it by little candlelight. They didn't even know they were being assessed. They were just having a little fun activity. And we had about 4 of those big writing assessments throughout the year. And to see what they wrote at the start of the year to what they were able to write at the end, it's incredible.
Yes, keeping those assessments consistent is a really easy way to make it easy for you. And then you're not explaining everything to the students, and then you can compare. I love that.
Yes.
Tell me, were you using the Big Write program?
No, it was just something that I think that my teaching partner, she had done at a previous school. I don't know that it was part of any program, but it was just like retelling a story from a really easy decodable reader. So we would go through it, and there were lots of little picture prompts. There were some sentence starters, and it was just them retelling the story, basically. It was a nice, easy little assessment that you could checklist off, for your punctuation and your retell and that type of thing. Yeah, and it was consistent throughout the year. And again, with the numeracy stuff, we used Westwood, which is the 1-minute timed little tests. And again, looking at the results at the start of the year to the end of the year, it's just incredible. When you do that at least once a term, you can start reassuring yourself and go, okay, I am making a difference, which is what you want to be doing. Yeah.
Yeah, the purpose of why you went into the job in the first place.
Exactly. Yeah.
It sounds like you had a really great supportive teacher next door that knew how to work a little bit smarter and not harder, which is one of the things we're always saying here at Rainbow Sky.
Yes. And that was really good. We were both new to the school, but she had 20 years experience and we were on the same page. We were wanting to teach the same way and we had the same type of ideas about things. So we worked really well and we're going to work again together this year. So again, just consolidating all of that. And yeah, I'm super excited.
That's amazing. Some of the best things I've ever learned are from the teachers that I've worked alongside with. So that is a gift within itself.
Yeah, absolutely is. It really is. Best PD is just down the hall.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love that, Lydia. So let's change tracks a little bit. I know one of the areas you feel really strongly about is supporting neurodivergent students. Can you share your story as to why?
Yeah, sure. I have 3 children, 2 of whom are neurodivergent. So my son has Tourette Syndrome, ADHD, and OCD. And then I have daughters who are just about to start high school. So super exciting time for them. And one of the girls has ADHD and anxiety.
Okay, so you have got experience with this in your own household. This is why I really wanted to chat to you about this. I know that this is personal, so I really appreciate you sharing your story with us. It's always great to hear from a parent's perspective because as teachers, we can feel empathetic and we only know what we've experienced ourselves. We don't get a lot of training in this. We don't get a lot of professional development, which we need more. I'm a big believer in that. I think we need to support our teachers so that they can support their students. I would love to know, what does advocating for your own children look like when it comes to their schooling?
Yeah, like I've been doing this for quite some time. My son is about to go into year 10 and he got his diagnosis in year 1.
Wow.
So yeah, it's been a long road. I guess the first thing I started doing when he, had all these things going on was to educate myself.
Yes.
And that was to learn as much as I could about these diagnoses that he was receiving and what that looks like. And, it's going to look different for each child, but to understand the background of it and what I learned in those first few years, I've just been building on. I'm still learning about Tourette's and about ADHD because we are still learning about them as, a medical community and a society. And we are changing how we talk about these things and even in the language that we use. So yeah, I'm still learning. But advocacy for me was me teaching myself. And then it was about teaching the teachers, the staff at the school. Because like you say, as teachers, we don't get enough of this in professional development. We certainly don't learn enough about it at universities. In the student teacher phase, there was very little when I was at university as well. This is the one good thing about social media, right? Is that there are some amazing groups out there. It's got its dark side, social media, but some of the really good things is this type of stuff. And there are amazing support groups for ADHD. We have our Tourette's community on social media. And basically I just joined those and I would learn from other people as well. And I would learn about the policies and the rights of the child. And as teachers, we also need to know about these and what the child is entitled to at school, what their rights are around the school and what the school should be providing. When I was advocating, I would have meetings with the school, but it was also about just liaising with the classroom teachers. I would provide, when I learned about it was a few years down into my journey, but a little 1-page profile on my child with their background, some of their interests, maybe some of for my son, some of the tics that he has, some of the triggers and things that help. So we cannot, as parents, expect the teachers to know all of this.
No.
They simply don't know. And especially sometimes things get lost in the handover from one classroom teacher to the next classroom teacher. There's a lot of kids in a class. So I would do this every year to make sure that the next teacher knew exactly the same information and what they needed to know for a new school year and not just assume that it had been passed over already. And I think that working with teachers as a parent is important, and then vice versa, that the teacher working with the parent is important as well. It's not a us versus them.
Yes.
It's working together as a team. I think that's
100%.
really, really important. There are some strong advocacy groups out there. I have been a part of them. I've had to step back because I am now in in that teaching space, and I'm not just a parent, because a lot of them are, they advocate to the Department of Education in each state and things like that. I am employed by the department, so I do have to have a step back from that. It's basically just sitting down with the teacher at the start of the year, I think, is a good first thing to do.
I agree. I think that's a great first step. In fact, I've worked at schools where they've encouraged that for every student, which I think is really a great way to make that connection and just get a bit of an idea of the background of that student and what their specific needs is. But in a case like what you're saying with your own children, a longer chunk of time is probably important. So putting aside a time before or after school outside of those general interviews that you're doing, just to nut out a few different ideas. Do you give suggestions on ways that they can change the classroom environment or adapt things in order to help your children?
Yeah, but not like in a "you must do this" type of way. Yeah, in a
Don't come across like that, Lydia.
In a more, what I find really helps is if they have access to thankfully, the kids have been at a school where there was a lot of support, which is fantastic. And they would have access to things like fidgets or some quiet space or a pass to leave the class, things like that. Just lots of practical things. We're not asking for the world. It's just lots of practical little things. And sometimes, if teachers are new and they haven't had a student with ADHD in their classroom before, it's difficult having students who take up a lot of that time and attention of the teacher is tricky, but there are lots of little practical things that parents can give to the teacher and giving them the strategies that work at home. Letting the teacher know that these are the things that work at home. And then if you continue and be consistent with these strategies at school, it's actually going to make things a lot easier because everyone's on the same page.
Definitely. And kids thrive on routine. So if we're keeping things consistent, they know that you as the parent and the teacher are on the same team, that the routine is the same, that their strategies when they're feeling unregulated can be the same. It sounds like it's going to be helpful for everyone in that way.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
Lydia, can I ask you, how do you feel about labels? So we spoke about some labels of your own children, and I know some parents and some teachers dislike labels, others like them, they advocate for them for different reasons. Where do you sit on that line of labels?
Yeah, so I remember when my son was seeing his pediatrician and the pediatrician said, oh, look, yeah, he's probably got Tourette Syndrome, but you don't have to call it that if you don't want to. And I remember thinking, at the time I was working in health in the medical field, and I was thinking, well, why don't I want to call it Tourette Syndrome? If it's Tourette Syndrome, I will call it Tourette Syndrome. If it's ADHD, I will call it ADHD. I don't need to pretend that it's something else. Now, I know that people don't like the label for whatever reason. I don't have a problem with it. I don't find it a label as such. I find it just giving an opportunity for people to understand people's differences.
Yes.
And we all think differently, work differently. My son is not his Tourette syndrome. That is only a part of who he is. The ADHD is only a part of my daughter. She's extremely funny and caring, and she's extremely smart. The fact that she's got ADHD or lives with ADHD is only one tiny part of it, of her life, of her story. But it's very much an individual thing. I think if you don't want to give your child, I don't see it as a label,
Yeah,
so it's hard for me to kind of see it from that side. But if people don't want to use these things, then yeah, that's an individual thing, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've had conversations over the years, same sort of lines. And I think as a teacher, sometimes it can be really helpful when we have people who are outside professionals, and outside professionals tend to give our children labels. I'm going to use inverted commas there. But along with these labels often come a lot of different suggestions and recommendations for adjustments. And that is a hugely positive thing in my point of view.
Yeah. Absolutely. And you know what? I wouldn't even say that it's a label. At the end of the day, it's a diagnosis.
Yes.
Yeah, because these are
correct
medical people who are having to deal with the assessment. It's not like we've just gone to a big, large chain supermarket and picked something off the shelf and said, yeah, my child's got this. They have to go through rigorous testing for these things. So these are medical diagnoses, and they're actually not that uncommon. We have a large amount of children in our classrooms that live with ADHD or that are autistic. And I think you're right, comes with that the ideas for support for those particular students. especially students who have gone straight from high school to university, coming through university and entering in a classroom in your early 20s, you don't have this knowledge of the world, never mind, all of these individual needs that students might have. So listening to parents and listening to the professionals is a key part of our role, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, it's about that ongoing learning that we were talking about at the very beginning.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So we've spoken a little bit about this, but is there any more advice you could give from the perspective of a parent? So a new teacher's listening to this, any advice you could give to the new teachers about you as a parent wanting to come in and advocate for your neurodiverse children?
Just to be prepared to sit and listen, really, and to be curious. Ask questions of the parents. What works at home? What can you tell me? What can you recommend to me? How can you help me as the teacher? Yeah. And strategies that work at home will work in the classroom. And you know what? Strategies that work for these neurodivergent students will work for everybody else, because they're usually just about taking time, but having a little bit of time out, by just regulating ourselves and being comfortable and sitting in our emotions. How is that not good for every child? These are things that are good for adults. I think listening to the parents and being prepared to work with the parent as a team is, I guess, what I would advise for teachers. Yeah.
I love that. So you've talked to us about your perspective as a parent, but have you had experience from the other side of the coin? So navigating difficult conversations as the actual teacher?
Yeah, so this year, only teaching 1 year, and I've had 2 students in my year 1 class who did go and receive a diagnosis for ADHD after difficult conversations. Now, what I would say is that I can't comment as a medical professional. I'm not a medical professional. So as teachers, what we can do is have a conversation with parents about what we are seeing in the classroom. And I would always start these conversations with a positive, because they don't want you coming at them with something that's not going to be so positive about their child. So start the conversation with a positive, like they're doing amazing at this, or look, have examples of the work, or talk about how socially they're doing at school. There's always something. So start with a positive. And then I would say something like, this is what I'm noticing. I'm just going to tell you something that I'm noticing in the classroom. Little John is finding it difficult, or is unable to, or, struggling with, however your school wants you to frame these things. For me, one of my little students was really super distracted, could not write one sentence, so needed lots of prompting. Okay, pick up the pencil. Okay, write the first letter. Okay, be looking right. There was lots and lots of support that was required, lots of scaffolding. So I had to have a conversation with the mum and say, this is what I've noticed. Are you seeing this at home? And then usually it's yes, and they will start. And then my next question would be, has anybody brought this up to you before?
Yes.
Has this been mentioned before? Was it mentioned last year in pre-primary or in kindy? Again, it was the same with my children. I remember the pre-primary teachers saying to me, oh, she's lost her hat again, things like this. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's lost another water bottle, rolling the eyes, and all this type of thing. Usually there's like a pattern of this. If it's a child that is going to need assessment, usually has been a pattern. For other children, it could be for other reasons. So when my daughter got her diagnosis, and I had an inkling myself, I was like, yeah, I think she does have ADHD. I was like, oh, but she's super young. It's just because she's young, and we'll see how she progresses. And it wasn't until she was in year 2 or year 3, and the teacher said, she's got so much potential, and I'm just not seeing the output that I would really like to see with her. And then I was like, oh, she's probably got ADHD, and I'm crying. And then she's like, oh no, I don't mean to upset you. And I know from that teacher's perspective, it was really difficult for her to even have to bring that up with me. But I thank her. I high-fived her when my daughter got her ADHD diagnosis. I knew that it was going to be a good thing, because now she could get the support that she needed. And I guess I've shared that story with the parents of my students, because my daughter couldn't write a few sentences. And then when she got her diagnosis and started her medication, she was able to write pages and pages. So I've gone through that same thing. I do have that lived experience. And so I would just share that with the parents to reassure them that, I guess, because people are really afraid.
Yes.
to even go through the assessment for the fear of what the results might be and then what that means for their child. And even thinking and talking about medication. The parents, they were asking me about medication. I can't tell you what to do, but for me, I did medicate my children. And my children are still on their medication. They need it. Their brains need it. They are lacking the, neurochemicals in their brain, and the medication provides them with that. If they don't have that, they cannot learn. So for me, that's a no-brainer. But, that's for me as a parent. I know other parents will think differently, and that's okay. I always say to these parents, once they've had these diagnoses, you need to discuss that again with the pediatrician. We can give you information. I'm happy to point them in the direction of resources that can help them and things that have helped me to make those decisions. But I'm not here to give that advice, I guess, is what I'm saying. I can only talk to the parents as the teacher of the class, of their child.
Absolutely. The thing that you're saying, which I've experienced in my own career a lot over the years, is that this is really a journey. I know that is a very overused term, but we're on a track. And you might make a decision about your child at one point, and that might not be the right decision later on. You can change your mind, and that is fine. And if you're dealing with students earlier on in their schooling, like kindergarten and year one, parents may have heard things before, but they might not be 100% ready to move on to the next step. And that's fine too. We need to respect the parents. I think too, we sometimes forget that parents, the most precious thing in their lives are their children. So all they want is the best for their children. And teachers, on the other hand, all they want is the best for the students too. So we're all on the same path. We've all got the common goal, and we just need to work together and going with the parent and where they are, because it's an emotional thing for them.
Oh, huge.
As a teacher, it's not so, I know we feel empathetic and we want the best for our students, but it's not the same as being a parent and dealing with all of the emotions that come with that. And that's what I'm hearing from you. So thank you for sharing so honestly with us.
Oh, no, my pleasure. Thank you.
I think it's really great for teachers to hear it from the perspective of a parent, and even that your son's the eldest, isn't he?
Yes.
Yeah, so you had been through it before, but still with your daughter, it took that little bit of extra time.
Oh, absolutely. I was thinking the executive function skills were just lagging. The usual, lose things. She was so disorganized, all of these things. Couldn't follow like a 3-step instruction, all that type of stuff. And I knew all of this. And yet I was still waiting for her to just get better. I was just waiting for her to grow up a little bit and just to pull herself together. And it was an emotional thing for me to have to think about my little girl, this cute, sweet little thing, having ADHD. You're right. It is a journey that we go on, going through all of that emotions. And I guess that was me as a parent. And there's probably a lot of history behind that because they were prem. There was a lot of trauma. That there was a lot of things that were going on for me as the parent then that, I just want her to be okay and, neurotypical or whatever. And that was never going to be her, so I just have to be comfortable and accept what it is, who she is. And absolutely.
Okay, so this year I know that you've got some more challenges in your classroom, and challenges is not a negative word when I say that.
No.
I think that as teachers we're always learning, which is fabulous. So you have got a full-time TA in your class this year. And I was interested to find out what sort of ways you plan on using this support in your classroom with the students.
Well, this is actually a really new thing for me. So this particular TA or EA, we call them here in WA, education assistant, she will be assigned to a particular student because of his high needs. And again, I've never done this before. So she will be working one-on-one with them, with this particular student. And my goal at the moment, they were on a shorter day because they were unable to attend for a whole day. They'd missed a lot of school, working at a much lower level, and were being separated from the main classroom for safety. There's a lot going on for this particular child. My goal and the goal of the EA, we've spoken about this and we're on the same page again, which is important. We've had the conversations. We are primarily working on social and emotional skills for this child to help them to be able to regulate. And this is going to be the start of the year, to be able to be a part of the classroom environment and to feel safe in that classroom environment. That's the goal. so that they don't have to be separated. And then we will go from there. Basically, that is our goal, is to work so that this child can be included back in the classroom. And it's going to be a huge learning curve for me. Everything about this is completely new, but it is completely 100% aligned with my values, and as a teacher and as a parent and, as an advocate, everything. I am inclusive and I want to be able to help this child as much as I can.
By the sounds of everything that you've said so far, you're very big on putting the time in order to get the best outcome. And I think we've got to slow down before we speed up.
Yes.
And the fact that you've had these conversations with your assistant before school starts and you've got a little plan in play, and that might change, but that's fantastic that there's a plan and you've taken the time to make that plan.
Yeah, absolutely. And, nothing's been written down or anything like that yet. I worked on just putting together a little social story to send home with this student at the end of last year. So it's got a picture of me. It had a picture of her. It had a picture of the school, of the classroom, the usual type of things. Again, I've never done this before, but I've had it done for my children. So I was kind of working off that type of premise. And then I sent it through to her and to my deputy. And then she just said, oh, can I edit it? And I'm like, yes, please do. Because the EA has got a lot more experience with this than I do. She's edited it a little bit. We printed it out and sent it home with him for the holidays, so that when they come back, they might be, hopefully, a little bit of familiarity just to start off the year. And look, and if there's not, we'll just work with that as well. At our school, we have something called the first 6 weeks. So again, it's a bit more of a gentle approach into the start of learning. I mean, learning is still happening, but we are taking the first 6 weeks to work on the relationships with the students, to set up all of the expectations and to make sure that the students know exactly what is expected in the classroom and outside of the classroom and moving around the school and that type of thing. Yeah, so I'm hoping that during that time, even though I need to also hit the ground running with learning and our curriculum, that we will have some time to work with this student as well.
That sounds absolutely fabulous. We need that in every school across the world.
Yeah, no, it's good.
It sounds fabulous. I think that's one of my big bugbears with teaching and the education system, is that we don't give the students enough time to be and to develop those relationships, because we know they can't learn unless they're feeling safe and secure and they trust who's with them in the environment. And for some kids, it takes a long time to get to know you and to trust you. And it also takes time to set up routines and things like that. And sometimes we just rush into it because there's so much curriculum to fit in. And there's always so much to do, and just schools are busy places. But that's one thing I'd love to see, is everything just slow down, because I think we would still get the most amazing outcome if we did.
I think so. Yeah. This, I've only been there a year, but this school has been doing it for a while now, and it works. It helps. Yeah. Yeah.
Fabulous. So before we wrap up, I just like to ask you a few little questions about your time inside our membership, Transform Your First Years, or TIPI, as we love to call it on the inside. What made you join the membership? You've got plenty of life experience. You've got your own kids, but you joined us.
Oh, I did. Oh, my goodness. Well, as soon as I remember watching those free little sessions that you did in the school holidays last year. And I remember going, oh my God, this is going to help me for the support, for the advice of experienced teachers, tips along the way, all the resources. Absolutely. It was just a no-brainer. Yeah, I've got life experience. I've never been a teacher before. So yeah, it was for the support and for all the stuff, basically. Yeah.
I like that. I felt like that when I became a parent. I remember I had my first little son, and it was the day after he was born, and I went to change his nappy, and the nurse said, "What do you do for a job?" And I said, "Oh, I'm a teacher." And she started laughing. She's like, "Surely you could do better than that." And I was like, "Well, you don't change nappies of newborn babies in the classroom. I have no idea what I'm doing."
I know. Yeah, exactly. I remember looking at my husband in the car. I remember when we put our son in the car seat going home, and we're like, what do we do now? That was like me with my first classroom. I remember standing in the classroom looking around at the furniture, at the chairs, at the tables, and going, what do I do? I didn't really know what to do. So yeah, having your checklists and having all of the staff that was what was helping.
Yeah, I always find too, if you're thinking, oh, I just need help with this, like, what should I put on the classroom rules? We've got a checklist for that. Or what about routines? What sort of routines do I need to think about? We've got a checklist for that. That's what we want to try and say, that hard thinking, we've done it for you. So then you just have to go and implement it. So you don't have to do both things.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was exactly right. Yeah.
So what was the first thing you learned inside the membership that you applied in your teaching? I'm really interested to hear this.
Oh, well, I was trying to think, and I don't really know, but I think it was the organization stuff.
Okay.
And using your checklists. I'm a checklist kind of gal.
Yeah.
Like I say, getting started, me standing in the classroom and going, oh my God, what do I do? And then going, hang on a second, I've got stuff here that can help me with this. And using those checklists. And
Fabulous.
your growth mindset stuff. Oh my God. Oh my God. Yeah, it was just the getting started thing was really helpful, and it was just what I needed because I just didn't know where to get started and how to get started. They don't teach you that at uni. They
do not.
And you start your prac in week 4 of a term. You have no idea how to set up a classroom.
I felt exactly the same way, and I remember it so vividly when I first started teaching it, and it was a long time ago now, but I remember thinking, I don't know what to do on the very, very first day with my students. Yes. And I don't know how to set up the reading groups. Every time I've gone into prac, they've already been up and running. It's like those things that are really foundational.
Yep. I had 3 pracs and none of them were setting up a classroom. And I still don't think any university that do that go
There's
in.
one here in Sydney that does it now.
Wow.
They start up,
amazing.
They go in on the very first week. From a teacher's perspective, that's probably a little overwhelming having a prac student there.
Yes.
But from the prac student's perspective, that's fabulous.
It's a huge advantage, really. Seeing and learning straight up what needs to be done. I had no idea. So having your checklists, amazing.
Fabulous. What about if someone was sitting on the fence about joining Transform Your First Years, what would you say to them?
Oh, do it. Go for it. What I love, right, is that you can watch the videos or the masterclasses at any time. It's totally flexible. I remember I was on one of the live masterclasses or something, one of the live chats or something.
The Q&As, yeah.
Yeah, Q&As. My daughter's basketball game. And I was like, oh, yeah, I can totally do 2 things at the same time. It's like, oh my God, totally can't. But anyway, but then you can just go and do it another time. And the masterclasses are there for whenever. You can just do it at your pace. And I love how there's always examples of things in your assessment section. There's a checklist of things, a guide through, but then it gives you examples of, it'll give you an example of a rubric. And there's not just one example, there's a couple of examples and things like that. So there's always things to guide you through what it is that you're doing, whatever stage you're at.
Oh, that's fabulous. I love that you've watched the masterclasses. That's so great, Lydia.
Yeah.
So before we go, are there any parting words of wisdom you have for new teachers out there?
Oh my God, words of wisdom. Don't be afraid to ask for help if you need it. Just ask for help. If it's the teacher next door or if it's your deputy or your principal or anything, or contacting someone that you're at uni with. Again, and another really good thing about the membership is knowing that other early teachers are going through exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
It's just reassuring that you're not in this alone, that you're not like weird or you're not failing because this is what you're thinking. This is perfectly normal. And there are heaps of other people thinking and feeling exactly the same way. Be yourself. I had an amazing mentor teacher at my final prac who is still a mentor to me and a good friend. I'm working with an amazing teacher of 20 years next door. I struggle with this myself, but comparing myself to them, especially for me because I'm in my mid-40s, we're all around the same age. Comparing myself to them, this is my second year of teaching. Don't compare yourself to others. Just be yourself and know that this is a process. We are just going step by step, year by year, and enjoy it.
Totally enjoy it. It is such a fabulous job. Yes, it's hard, but it is so rewarding, as you said at the very beginning, and it is just a fabulous job. And don't be afraid to ask for the help. There are programs that have been pre-written before. Teachers want to help you. They're in the service, they're in the industry of helping others, so ask.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you do ask, you just get heaps of things, heaps of support.
Fabulous advice. So Lydia, thank you so much for coming and sharing so honestly and heartfeltly about everything that you shared today. I am so grateful for you coming along and doing that and giving up your time for the podcast. If people wanted to connect with you after this interview, is there a way that they can do that?
If anyone is in WA and needs support with Tourette Syndrome, so I am the WA Support Group Coordinator, and my details are on the Tourette Syndrome website, which is tourette.org.au. I don't share a huge amount of teacher stuff, but you can find me on Instagram, Lydyrob, Lydyrob.
Fabulous. So I'll put the link to that website in our show notes so people can go and connect it there, and they may even be able to find some great information there as well.
Absolutely. There's educators packs and heaps of stuff on the website. Yeah.
Fabulous. So that's for anyone in any state. If you're in another state of Australia or even overseas, you're listening to this, there's information there at your fingertips. So I'll make sure that I link that in the show notes.
Thank you.
And also Lydia is in our Facebook group for Transform Your First Years too. So if you're there, feel free to give her a little shout out in the Facebook group because you're always in there, and we really, really appreciate you, and you're a valued member of our community.
Oh, thank you so much. And you ladies do amazing work, so thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. We absolutely love our job. We've got the best job in the world. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Wow. I know I said this throughout the interview a few times, but I wanted to thank Lydia for being so open and honest throughout our interview together. It's not always easy to share about your own children, but everything she shared is going to be so helpful for us as teachers. I know it definitely has been helpful for me. So thank you so much, Lydia. If you loved today's episode, please go and rate and review. And if you're interested in joining Transform Your First Years, our membership for new teachers, the doors are open, and I will pop a link to that in the show notes. You can come on in and say hello to Lydia and everyone else in the community. It really is such a supportive, wonderful community of like-minded teachers who are all in the same boat, because we believe that no one should be riding that struggle bus on their own here at Rainbow Sky. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next week. There are rainbows ahead, my friend, and together, you've got it. We're unstoppable.